Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Christina Langell. Tuesday was Democratic and Republican primary election across the state, and in Pittsburgh in particular, there was a very big upset for the mayor's race. So, Christina, tell us a little bit more about what happened.
So this is a pretty consequential primary because in general, Pittsburgh tends to have Democratic mayors. It has since the 1930s. So the assumption is whoever wins that Democratic primary is going to likely be the next mayor of the city. And it's pretty rare for an incumbent to be unseated. So this was a big election. So the current mayor, Ed Gainey, was unseated by a challenger, the county controller for Allegheny County, Cory Okconor.
And like you mentioned before, that was a pretty big upset. Can you talk a little bit more about, because these are two Democrats, right? So one has to wonder, how different are they?
So from a high level view, Ed Gainey is considered more of a progressive candidate, and he's in line with some of the progressive movement that we've seen picking up steam in Pittsburgh, especially like we have, our at the national level, you have Summer Lee, people like that who have really picked up a lot of attention in the area. And Okconor represents, I would say, probably more of a centrist Democrat angle. He comes from a political family. His father was also the mayor. He had a lot of support from both Republicans and developers, people who really want to see a lot of capital investments in the city and a very pro-business approach to trying to kind of address some of the city's issues, especially when it comes to like cleaning up blighted neighborhoods and revitalizing in that way.
Affordable housing, too, was a big sticking point in this election. Talk a little bit more about how what those issues meant to each candidate.
Yeah, I think they both see it as a huge priority. They just have very different approaches to achieving it. I think that there is a very pro-development sort of mentality coming from the Okconor side of things. And that's not to dismiss the fact that there has been some growth in affordable housing while Gainey has been mayor. I think there was about 1,600 housing units added. So I think there's just kind of two different perspectives. As a lot of people on the left side of the left think that, if there's a lot of investment from developers, that's ultimately going to just kind of create more unaffordable housing and, line their pockets. Whereas, people might be looking for a slower strategy that favors like a slower development working. I think both of them really want to stress working at the neighborhood level, though.
Something that seems particularly specific to this race, too, is the idea of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but essentially making nonprofit property owners pay more in taxes, particularly when it comes to UPMC. Tell me a little bit more about that, too.
Yeah, so UPMC is huge throughout the state of Pennsylvania, but most especially in its home of Pittsburgh, and it owns a lot of property. And in Pennsylvania, the way that property taxes work, they affect a lot. That's the primary way that our school systems are funded. So there are a lot of really essential needs funded through property taxes, but when you have large areas of space taken up by nonprofit entities who don't have to pay as much in property tax, then you're just kind of missing a big portion of the revenue that the space requires to fund things like schools. So that's something that, in theory, having something like UPMC pay its fair share or more than it does, we'll say, would be something that could potentially really benefit the community. And in general, given their stature and success, probably something that their system could afford. And I can't speak for them, but I think that's the idea. People are saying, if you're a pretty big company, you could pay your fair share.
And that's something that Gainey had promised to do, or at least said that he wanted to pursue during his term, right?
Yes. And I don't think that it saw success yet. I don't want to say that it was unsuccessful because I think it's probably a pretty slow process going through the legal system to do so. But it did not materialize in time for people to be satisfied with Gainey's term as mayor.
All right, Christina, thanks for joining us today. To keep up with this story and more, follow us at thecentersquare.com/Pennsylvania.